Welcome back to Cultural Discoveries. On today's segment, we will be exploring the many aspects that make up ancient Greek culture. My name is Munira, and joining me today, I have Zayna and Hayley to explore in depth the art, literature, beliefs, food, and many other intricacies that made up ancient Greece. But first off, let's talk about where they lived. As seen here, the ancient Greeks mainly populated the mainland and islands surrounding what we know to be Greece today. They were also located on the west coast of Turkey and in and around the Mediterranean and Black Sea. They referred to this land as Hellas or Hellada, and they referred to themselves as Hellenes. Due to the dispersal of their population, the ancient Greek language was composed of a variety of different dialects. The Greeks spoke four main dialects. First up, we have Attic. Attic was spoken in the Attica region, or what we now know today to be Athens. They also spoke a dialect called Doric. Doric was spoken in the Peloponnese region, and what we can now identify with as southern Greece. Another dialect they spoke was called Ionic. Ionic was spoken in the Ionia region. This region was comprised of a variety of different islands located in the Aegean Sea. And finally, they spoke the Aeolic dialect. This dialect was spoken in the Thessaly and Boeotia region on the mainland of Greece, and it was also spoken on the island of Lesbos. Now, these dialects have made their way into famous literary works of ancient Greece's past, and they have also had a major influence on the modern Greek language spoken today. This ancient Greek language dates back to the 13th or 14th century BCE and is first documented on clay tablets, wildly different to the electronic tablets that we use today.
The ancient Greeks believed that the gods and goddesses watched over them from Mount Olympus, a palace high in the clouds. They believed that Zeus was the most powerful of the deities and that other gods and goddesses like Aphrodite controlled other aspects of their life. To honor the gods, the citizens would build temples of all sizes where they could pray during difficult times and offer gifts such as money, food, flowers, and drinks to gain their favor. Two of the most beloved heroes for Greeks were Hercules and Perseus. Hercules was known for his incredible strength. He could kill a lion with his bare hands, and he was granted immortality by Zeus after being poisoned by a rope. And Perseus, on the other hand, bravely killed Medusa, a monster with snakes for hair who could turn people to stone. The Greeks also believed in an underworld ruled by Hades, where souls would travel after death. They crossed the river Styx and were judged to decide if they were going to live happily ever after in the Elysian fields or if they would suffer consequences elsewhere.
Ancient Greece was very traditional in terms of gender roles, and women were seen as highly inferior individuals. They had no rights of citizenship, and even in the eyes of the law, were seen as under the complete authority of their husband. There was a shared belief about women in ancient Greek culture, and even such writers as Aristotle believed that women were intellectually incapable of making decisions. They had no political rights and were controlled by men at every stage in their lives. As they were unable to vote, own land, or inherit, a woman's role was said to be in the home, and her purpose in life was raising children, taking care of the homestead, spinning wool, and supervising slaves. All women were expected to marry, as there was no role in ancient Greek society for single adult females. The role of men in ancient Greece revolved around public life, civic duties, and responsibilities. Men had to participate in politics, serve in the military, and engage in trade. Along with this, civic involvement was central to their identity, requiring them to serve on committees, act on juries, serve in the military, and engage in public debate. Physical fitness was highly valued, with many men training for athletic competitions like the Olympics or preparing for warfare. As heads of the household, men managed finances, oversaw dependents, and protected the honor and stability of their families. Their lives were shaped by achievement and contributions to the glory of the city-state, embodying ideals of honor, duty, and public service.
If you're approaching or maybe even past the point in your life where you've got your driver's license, you've thrown yourself a sweet 16 birthday party, you've got your first job, or maybe you've even graduated high school, you have experienced a rite of passage. A point in time that brings us closer in our transition from childhood to adulthood. But unlike these very normalized things in our society, the ancient Greeks did it a little bit differently. They categorized their rites of passage into 5 main ways. all of which were centered around continuing the next generation in the same way as the previous one. These rites of passage were as follows: the continuation of the human species, the continuation of oikos, the continuation of the tribe, the continuation of the state, and finally the continuation of the soul. These rites of passages were split up into 3 main phases each: separation, transition, and integration. Just like rites of passage vary between genders today, this principle was the same for the ancient Greeks. For men, the rite of passage was determined by their age. However, for women, their rite of passage was determined by the events that they experienced in their lifetime. For example, a woman didn't reach full adult status until she reached sexual maturity, was married, and gave birth to her first child. Now let's talk a little bit more in depth about the 5 rites of passages. To start off, the continuation of the species. As the name implies, this involved procreation of a child. This occurred after marriage, by which point both parties had reached sexual maturity. The continuation of oikos involves the continuation of both the genetics and family wealth. Oikos roughly translates to household, which makes sense in this context. So this could be anything from inheriting the house or any other assets that were associated with family wealth. The continuation of the tribe involved stepping away and finding independence as an individual. For women, this meant stepping away from the family that they were born and raised in and moving into their husband's oikos, or family, upon marriage. And for men, this meant stepping away from their wives and kids to serve in the military. The continuation of state involved the transition period from the freedom of youth to the responsibilities of adulthood. It was centered around becoming a citizen of your state. And finally, the continuation of the soul involved the spiritual and religious aspects of the everyday lives of the ancient Greeks.
In ancient Greece, love, sex, and marriage were very closely linked with social status and family interests. For those in higher social status groups, marriages were often arranged for financial and social gain, rather than love. Men frequently had affairs, and women were advised to stay indoors to avoid those situations. Fathers typically chose their daughters' husbands based on wealth and status, and marriage was seen as a way to increase the family's social standing. Most marriages involved upper-class families, with women marrying in their early teens and men marrying in their late 20s after completing military service. A crucial aspect of these marriages was a dowry, which would include land, money, or anything of value. The size of the dowry often influenced the choice of the bride. Wedding ceremonies included sacred rituals like sacrifices to the goddess Hera or Artemis, symbolizing the bride's journey from childhood to adulthood. The bride would sacrifice animals, food, and even her childhood belongings in a way to honor these deities to mark the loss of her virginity.
Let's step back to ancient Greece, a civilization alive with art, music, architecture, and literature that continues to inspire us. Music wasn't just entertainment, it was woven into life, guiding rituals, festivals, and social events. The Greeks played instruments like the lyre, linked to the god Apollo, and the oldos, a double-piped wind instrument used in ceremonies and theater. Though much of their music is lost, fragments survive, giving us a glimpse into their soundscape. Greek modes like Dorian, Phrygian, and Lydian shaped the foundations of music theory, their echoes still heard in modern music. Greek art was a celebration of harmony, naturalism, and idealized forms. Early sculptures like the Kudos statues portrayed men in tall, rigid, and stylized poses. But over time, Greek sculptors became masters at capturing movement and life, like with Myron's Diskobolos, embodying the athletic ideal. And it wasn't just in marble. Their pottery told vivid stories like scenes from mythology, daily life, and war. The Francois vase stands as one of many artifacts that offer us a visual glimpse into the storytelling traditions of ancient Greece. The Parthenon remains a towering example of design. With its rectangular platform, porches, and rows of columns, the Parthenon was a commanding example of Greek architecture. Greek architects devised many techniques to make their buildings look perfect, like crafting horizontal planes with a U-shape and columns that were much wider in the middle. With these innovations, the buildings looked flawless. These techniques set an artistic ideal, influencing everything from Renaissance architecture to modern buildings. Ancient Greek literature is the foundation upon which all European history and literature rests. Homer's Iliad and Odyssey stand as pillars of Western literature, exploring themes of heroism, fate, and the complexity of human nature. But the Greeks didn't stop there. They pioneered theater. From Aeschylus to Sophocles and Euripides, playwrights who grappled with moral dilemmas and human suffering. Beyond drama and poetry, Greek prose shaped history and philosophy. Think of Herodotus, known as the father of history, or Plato, whose dialogues continue to challenge the way we think about life and society.
There's nothing good to watch. This, however, was not a problem for the ancient Greeks. I mean, as Hayley said, they were the pioneers of theater. They were the ones to come up with the concept of tragedy and comedy, which has had a major influence on the movies we watch today. The first stage of theater was actually a ritual performed to honor the god of wine, harvest, but most importantly, partying, Dionysus. From here, theater evolved as an act that was performed in an outdoor setting. These outdoor settings were called amphitheaters, and they were basically a stage allowing the audience to sit around it in a circular fashion, with the seating angled downwards, which made for some amazing acoustics. Back in the day, it was common to only have one person acting during the whole duration of the performance. This, however, evolved to have a chorus accompany the actor. The chorus was a group of people that foreshadowed, narrated, and provided context to the actor's performance. Eventually, this further evolved into having multiple people act during a performance. It was common for the actors and the chorus members to be wearing costumes and themed masks. This is where the famous tragedy and comedy masks come from. Ultimately, theater was a form of catharsis for the ancient Greeks. It evoked a variety of complex emotions in them without having to have them face those events firsthand. It could evoke a good cry if it was a tragedy, or a good laugh if it was a comedy, very similar to the movies that we watch today. So, the next time you're scrolling through Netflix, remember, you have the ancient Greeks to thank for it.
Ancient Greek food was all about simplicity and freshness, using local ingredients that now shape what we know as a Mediterranean diet. Their staples included bread like maza, a barley flatbread, and artos, a leavened wheat bread. Along with this, they enjoyed olives, figs, grapes, pomegranates, and legumes. They grew vegetables like cucumbers, onions, and leafy greens, raised goats for milk and cheese, and fished. As for drinks, they enjoyed kikion, a barley drink mixed with water and honey, and drank diluted wines at their symposia, which were their lively drinking parties. Dinner was the main meal, with plates full of eggs, cheese, fish, olives, and vegetables like arugula, asparagus, and carrots. Meat was reserved for the wealthy or for special occasions like rituals, festivals, and sacrifices. Some of their cultural dishes included fakes, a lentil soup with onions, olive oil, and vinegar, dolmades, which are vegetables or barley wrapped in grape leaves, and saganaki, a fried or grilled cheese that is drizzled in honey.
Ancient Greece had various forms of government as it sought to answer the question of who should rule. The main types were democracy, monarchy, oligarchy, and tyranny. Democracy was especially important, allowing male citizens to participate in decision-making, while monarchy gave power to a hereditary leader. Oligarchy restricted power to a few, and tyranny involved one person taking control unfairly. Athens had the most famous democratic system, where assemblies met regularly on Nike's Hill, allowing up to 6,000 male citizens to vote by raising their hands. To encourage participation, citizens were paid for attending, and their travel fees were taken care of. However, Athenian democracy had its problems. Assembly members could be easily swayed by popular leaders, and important decisions were made by a group of 500 elders regarding topics like military and food supplies. In conclusion, ancient Greek culture created essential foundations in art, philosophy, and democracy that resonate today. Their beliefs, language diversity, and social roles were central to Greek life that inspired innovations in literature, architecture, and governance. Many democratic concepts and creative expressions, from sculptures to epic stories, originated here and still influence modern culture. This legacy is evident in today's political systems, artistic inspiration, and cultural traditions, showing how ancient Greece's influence still endures across time and is still with us today.